What's up, everyone? I am Void2, and today we're going to be wrapping up the coverage of Survivor 45 with our player rankings. Yes, that's right. We are going to rank each player from this season based on how they did both contained within this season and their potential if they get a call back to do another season. With that all out of the way, let's dive in and start it off. Now, starting us off at number 18, we have Sifu. Now, Sifu played as bad as a game as you could have. He started off basically doing these annoying moves and just being a total wild card, going publicly searching for idols, just being over the top. It really drove a wedge between him and his original starting tribe to the point where no one trusted him and no one wanted to work with him. If the Reba with the tribe lost the challenge and went to tribal, Sifu would have been the first one voted out, and would have been nothing he could have done to sway them otherwise, as he made legitimate enemies in Jay, Julie, D, and moving forward, when during the Shawn quit, he could have he was the one that was supposed to go home. There was a legitimate plan to blindside Sifu and get him out of the game, and the reason behind it was all because of his own actions. The only reason he was spared was because of Shawn's quit. So he barely survived that, and when we got to the merge portion, he had to have immunity, otherwise he would have been a potential target. And then during the split tribal, when he could have worked some ways to get the target off his back, it still remained on him, and where there was talks of either getting Bruce out or him out. Bruce was potentially a bigger target than him, but everyone who decided to take him out to eliminate a potential wild card, and that was all due to his own active actions in getting people not to trust him. So, because of all that, I have Sifu ranked at number 18. Now, next we have at number 17, I have Brandon. Now, I don't think Brandon is a horrible player like Sifu was, but there is a saying in Survivor where too much truth can sometimes hurt you, and he clearly was in a lot of pain, and I could see that, and his Survivor experience was going a lot worse than he wanted, and it showed. Like, he failed consistently, and instead of sweating it off and making it seem like, okay, no big deal, he was openly emotional and always told his tribe how badly he's failed to perform in any of the immunity challenges, and that's what put the target on his back. Now, I will also say Brandon's social game was effective in getting certain players to want to keep him around, like Saia, and I think if Brandon was decent in challenges, that Saia would have fought harder to keep him over Emily, but he was so visibly not good in these challenges that he was voted off to keep tribe strengths. And even if he managed to survive his vote, I don't see him being able to make it much further into the game, as I think his back would always be against the wall, and he would always be making active decisions that would hurt him down the road. That's why I have Brandon at number 17. Okay, now going into number 16, this person really gets under my skin because, I mean, she's a quitter. I have Hannah. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I have the quitter at number 16 instead of 17 or 18 even? I mean, she didn't. She was left on day 3. I have her this high, if you can call it that, because she was not the initial target going to that first tribal. I think out of the people who were not in the initial majority of Saia, Caleb, and Shawn, she was the least likely to go. Like, Brandon and Emily put the targets on themselves pretty well to where it was going to be either one of them, and it seemed like Hannah had natural inroads in that alliance when and if it crumbled, so she was in a good position in the initial Lulu tribe. But she let all that go because she could not handle the pressures of being out on Survivor. Had she not folded like I want to say taco shell. I believe taco shell is fold, right? Yeah. Had she not folded like a taco shell, I think she would have made it further into the game. Do I think she would have made a deep run? No. But due to the fact that she was not the initial target going into the first tribal, I have her at number 16. All right, now we're going to wrap up these disappointing players with our second to, thank God, fully last quit in Shawn. Now, I think Shawn played a more impressive game on paper, but I don't really see it. Yes, he was able to get in the majority with Saia and Caleb and put himself in a good position in the original Lulu tribe where he was making decisions, but while not at the forefront of what people saw, but his game plan seemed to be very straightforward, one-directional, where he's sort of second in command to Saia, and as soon as Saia was voted out, Shawn's game completely crumbled around him, and he would have been the next one voted off if there was no tribe swap. Emily and Caleb would have voted him out instantly. They saw the game Shawn was playing and knew the best move for them was to get Shawn out. Now, when the tribe swap happened, he had every opportunity to make it so Reba flipped and kept him around, and he successfully did. He got Jay to form a bond with him, and that worked. And Jay went back to Julie and Dee and convinced them to keep Shawn and to vote out Sifu. Good gameplay, yes, but when Tribal came, he completely crumbled and crashed and quit, allowing Sifu to stay in the game and majorly impact Jay, Julie, and Dee's games on the way out for little to no reason. Now, I do think Shawn played a decent game in this season, but if on a return, he would not fare so well either. Although I doubt he'll ever get another chance. For all that, I have Shawn at number 15. Now, moving on to number 14, I have someone who you all could argue played the most actively bad game, but did not realize he was playing a bad game. I have Bruce. Now, going into the season, Bruce should have been golden. Like, he was a returning player, good track record with those. He seemed to have a decent strategy for how to play the game, putting up this facade of himself as sort of like the drunk uncle, but his lack of social awareness completely devastated his game. He did not realize that he was creating enemies with this persona he was putting out, like Coutura, Kendra, who completely turned against him in his original Bello tribe. And from what we've seen in exit press, it sounds like it would have been Coutura, Kendra, Kelly, and Brando, maybe even Jake at one point, voted him out at the first tribal that they attended. So we will have had a Francesca Hoagie situation. Now, moving past the initial Bello tribe to the swap, I think this is where Bruce was in the least amount of danger throughout the entire game. He had allies in Jake and Kelly who were willing to go to bat for him, and at least for those first few days, he was getting Caleb on his side. Now, when he learned that Coutura was plotting against him, he completely severed ties with him and tried to make her the outcast of the tribe instead of him, which in a way was a good gameplay, but when you sever ties like that, it gives the other person equal opportunity to do the same to you, and that's what Coutura did. And it was a battle between Bruce and Coutura for who was going to win the war, and Bruce was not doing himself any favors past those first few days of the swap, and those actions that he took are what really put him in such a bad position going into the merge, where he had to have immunity in order to save himself. The only reason he survived the split tribal was because Kelly was willing to talk to everyone to get the target off his back, which could have been a mistake on her part, but it all ultimately turned out to happen, and Bruce got only one vote, where Sifu got voted out. Now, moving past that, he had to have immunity going forward, and he managed to win 2 immunities until the point where he his elimination episode where he told a lie about his idol, which all this was good strategy, but he just trusted the wrong people, such as Coutura, for some reason. And this lack of social awareness came to play where he believed Emily, where he did not have to play his idol, and the target was actually Julie, which was a mistake, and he ended up not playing his idol, and he got blindsided, and he knew he had to play the idol, and he didn't play it, and that, combined with all of his social lack of awareness and misreads and turning people against him, he played an actively bad game on this season. Now, a return, he could know what he's doing, but I honestly think he'd make the similar mistake. So, for all that, I have Bruce at number 14. Okay, now, for number 13, I have someone who I think played a second-rate game compared to everyone else on the season. I have Maya. Now, there's not a lot to talk about with Maya's game because we were not privy to seeing it, as she was not prominently shown on the show. But from what I could gather, she seemed to have a friendship, at least, with Dee and Julie, and was planning on being the 3 women of Reba strong, and that translated into her gameplay, as she was willing to fall on her sword for Dee, but those relationships were not to contributed on both sides as Dee and Julie were actively trying to get her out and throwing under the bus. But I don't blame Jemima for that because how could she know about the Reba 4 and their loyalties being towards Drew and Austin rather than her? Now, in the original Reba tribe, I believe they would have sent Sifu home before Jemima, and I think that would have been the same case in post-swap Reba. And when it came down to the Mergatory, things flipped on their head as Jemima suddenly became the biggest target, and Reba was actively trying to throw her under the bus. But I will give her credit because she was the backup target, Caleb was the forward target, and Caleb was going to go home if not for the shot in the dark. And we can only speculate on how well Jemima would have done after that vote had she survived, but I think at least she will survive a few more rounds before getting voted off by the Rebus. So, in total, Jay was not playing a strong game, but I think there's more there than meets the eye. Okay, now we're shifting gears from the bad players or the more dysfunctional players in the game, and now we're heading to like the mid-tier section, those who played good games but had some glaring holes in them, and if they were to ever return, I think that they would fare better. Now, starting us off, we have, surprisingly enough, our second boot, we have Sabaya. Now, Sabaya initially got herself into a very good position, setting herself as the central focal point of the Lulu tribe, to where she had the most control in the game, and she managed to get an idol for herself, which added more her power to her. And even though I think Sabaya was most well insulated at the beginning, she didn't have as much a sway as you would not typically see from this sort of player, because she wanted Emily out rather than Brandon, but Caleb and Shawn outnumbered her, and Brandon went instead of Emily. That's something to knock on Sabaya. And then the next episode, which was her vote out episode, was really where she kept on making mistakes. She initially lied to Emily about how the votes went, and then when she felt like she couldn't trust Caleb and saw how much of a threat he would be down the road, she went to Emily of all people and told her to trust her and to vote for Caleb, which was a mistake because Emily immediately went to Caleb to say, Sabaya's plotting against you, we gotta vote her out. And it worked. Sabaya had her guard down. She didn't play her idol, which she got for that one tribal council. And Emily and Caleb blindsided her and voted her out. There's not much to say on whether Sabaya is a good player or not. I do think she is. I just think that she needed more to go her way, and what it came down to is luck wasn't on her side, and she needed more awareness in that instance. Now moving on, we have our final pre-juror. We have Brando. Now, Brando is definitely one with more quieter edits on the show. He initially got like 5 in the first 2 episodes, and then he went on a 2-episode streak where he got Bubkiss, his zero confessionals, and then things picked up again in his boot episodes. So there's not much to really talk about here. He got into a middle position with Kelly, who seemed to be his number one ally, and vice versa, where they were in the middle and could decide whether Couture and Kendra would be with them or Jake and Bruce, and it seemed like they were willing to go either way to do that. And if original Bellow stuck together and there was no tribe swap, Brando would have, in my opinion, made a deeper run. But that wasn't the case, as a tribe swap happened, and Brando should have been in a very good position where there was two Bellows, two Rebas, and one Lulu in Emily. Now, Brando tried to make bonds with the Rebas and Drew and Austin, but those did not work and seemed to have put a target on his back. And the Bellows that was swapped with him, Kendra, it seems like they had the least amount of a relationship, so that's a hindrance on Brando's game. And when it came to Emily, it seemed like his strategy for trying to get her on their side was to throw Drew specifically under the bus and say that he is not to be trusted, which seemed to work at first, but Emily eventually had figured it out and had more trust in Drew and Austin rather than Brando and Kendra, but more like Brando specifically, where the three of them voted Brando out. So that concludes Brando's game. Now, my opinions on Brando as the player. I think Brando had a good start, and if there wasn't a tribe swap, he would have been golden. But there was, and he should have had every opportunity to try to save himself, but he couldn't, which, in my opinion, reflects on his game overall. So that's my opinions on Brando. I think you do decent on a return, but I don't see it happening. And combine all that together, that's why I have Brando at number 11. Now going into number 10, I have Kendra. Now, there's not much as far as my game knowledge of Kendra's abilities in the game, as we did not see much of those. We saw mostly her character moments, which is what Kendra was at the end of the day. She is a character. So we saw initially her close bonds with the other Bellow women in Kelly and Coutura, and that seemed to be her whole strategy, was to bond and go to the end with the women. And we also not saw but heard that through to a twist that we didn't see on the show, that Kendra went to the Lulu Beach and apparently she became close with players such as Emily. Now, after that, we saw her bond a little bit with Jake, so that shows how well she can bond with someone through just being personable, which does give credit to her game. Now, as soon as the tribe swap happened, things got a little shaky, as I think she was in a protected spot, but she was not able to use her relationship with Emily to get her on her side and save Brando and get rid of Drew, which is a hindrance. And then once we got to the merge, she was safe for the most part, but she wasn't during the split tribal. She initially wanted to get Bruce out, but through the actions of Kelly, she was not able to do that, so that shows her lack of ability to get what she wants. And then the next episode, we saw Kelly get voted out, and she was just emotionally distraught about that, and it played a factor into her last days in the game, where she made herself into a bigger target for where Dee and Drew wanted her out. So And I don't think she saw that coming. I think she thought it was going to be Jake. And so when it came down to the vote, she had no allies to try to save her, and it did not go well for Kendra in the very end. I do think she's a better player than she lets on, but I think through the constant emotional blindsides, it just wasn't in Kendra's favor this season. Okay, now we're at the halfway point where 18 people, 9 down, 9 to go. These are our top 9 in a sense. Now, starting us off, I have Jake. You're probably won't be shocked that I have the third place finisher at number 9. Well, just wait, it all makes sense. Okay, the start of the game, he was in a good position in Bello. He aligned himself closely with Bruce, but he was never going to be an immediate target. I mean, there was talks about targeting him at first, but those quickly went out the window. And then moving on, he kept getting himself more insulated to where he was never going to be a threat. And then the tribe switch, he found himself in an even more insulated, powerful position alongside like Kelly, for example. Then we get to the merge, and this is where his game sort of deteriorates, where he's getting these close bonds with people such as like Maya, Caleb. Thinking of a stir, but I can't think of it right now, so we'll just go with that. Anyway, he's making these bonds with these people, and he's trying to get push for another move to be made, but he cannot get these moves to happen. No one's willing to jump on the bandwagon, which shows his lack of a social game or strategic game where he can't get what he wants to happen. And so, and this a big example of this is during the split tribal vote. It's between Caleb and Julie, and he's got a plan to force a tie with Coutura, where potentially this plan could save Caleb, but his lack of a strategic game, plus with divulging impotent information to Coutura, led to her voting out Caleb instead of forcing a tie between Caleb and Julie. And from that point on, he kept on becoming the backup target and consistently thought he was going to be the one voted out. The Kelly vote. He thought he was going to be voted out. He played a shot in the dark. The Kendra vote. He was the backup target. The Bruce vote. If the plan was, if Bruce played his idol, Jake was the one that was supposed to go home. And it was close to happening. It was. From that point on, however, his name started getting out of circulation. He was safe during the Emily vote. But then from the final 6 on, he went back to his old ways of trying to make plans and make a big flashing move where he thought he was the one that formulated the true vote, but in fact, he was the last one to know about it, as Dee and Julie made that plan, informed Coutura, and then Coutura informed Jake. So Jake was the last one to know about that. And then in the final 5 vote, he had an idol, and he got all these advantages to help him help him in that round, but he did not. He kept on missing the mark in trying to get all of that together. So his initial plan was about Julie, but then Couture got in his head to vote out to D, and that worked. But Couture did not trust Jake because of what he was trying to do to save Couture. So Couture backed out of her own plan because she did not trust Jake, but Jake went along with her plan. So Julie went out, which was what he wanted, but then he changed his mind to D, so he voted D, but that didn't happen. So a bunch of Final 5 chaos. Then Final 5, true Owen moment where he broke the challenge, and then, he won fire, so that's good. But then we get to his final tribal performance where it was not that good, so he received no votes. I think if he were to return, he could do better, but for this round, he was able to survive, but he was not able to get anything actively done to benefit his game, so for all that, I have him at number 9. Now, moving on to number 8, I have Coutura. Now, early game, it seemed she instantly bonded with Kendra and Kelly for control over the women on Bello, but she put herself in a position where it was her on one side and Bruce on the other, and the two were on opposite ends, and if it went one way, it benefited her, and the other way, it wouldn't have. Now, in the switch, things took the turn for the worse, where it was a definite point where she was being socially outcasted and to put in a position where she was at the bottom, and if they had lost a challenge, more than likely Coutura would have gone home because Jake and Kelly at that point were not willing to lose Bruce over her. But the social game did help sway Caleb over to her side to where he made it a point to not trust Bruce. Now going into the merge, she was initially safe, and she had a power position in the split tribal where she could either go against the Rebus and vote out Julie or save Caleb. I think in her mind, Caleb was a threat that was no longer on my side, and her plan from then point out, after she voted Caleb, was stick with the Rebus, help them take out my former Bellows, and when they crack, they will need me, and I will make it to the end with what remains. It's a good strategy, but it's not an actively beneficial one because it relies on the fact that the Reba 4 would crack, which to her credit, they eventually did, but it's still a massive gamble, which I guess worked out to her favor, but in the event that it didn't, her strategy was essentially, okay, I'll help the majority alliance get rid of my former allies and limit my options to make a move, and by the time it comes down to the point where it's just me, I can't do anything. That's that was a real possibility. Now, her natural insight in how the game is playing out towards like the final 6 and 5 was really good, as she saw Drew and Dee as the most likely threats in the game, as well as Julie. So at 6, she took out Julie. But at 5, she planned on taking out Dee, but her fear got in the way, so she took out Julie. So she played the safe move and took out Julie, which did benefit her. But what what happened? What she did not want to happen ended up happening as Dee won the final immunity and sent her and Jake into fire, and she ultimately lost. If she did manage to survive, I think she would have had an argument in final tribal. I don't think she necessarily wins. I think out of the final 5 remaining, I think the only person that she would have gotten votes over was Jake, but that's not a winning scenario. So I think Coutura had played a safe, good game, and her conflicts with Bruce were definitely a center point in this season. I'm just not confident that she had a winning scenario, but on return, that could have changed. Now at number 7, I have someone that I think the general audience considers a fan favorite. I have Caleb. Now Caleb is someone that I consider, no matter what he does, he'll always be a threat. Like that's just how his general personality comes off as. And I think he played as good of a game as he could have given his natural charisma. Now, in the start of the game, he got himself into a good position with Saia and Shawn being the majority, and from he got his way with Brandon going home instead of Emily, and he used a very, very minuscule strategic technique that few Survivor players have ever done, where they cultivate a relationship with whoever is on the bottom of their tribe, in this case, Emily, to where they have all options open. They have their people at the top and their people at the bottom. And through that relationship with Emily saved him where he, where Emily went to him and said, "Okay, Sabai is plotting against you. You have to trust me, but we have to vote out Sabaya." And because of that, they were able to cultivate this blind side against Sabaya and Shawn and vote out Sabaya, who had an active idol at that point. And through that, they took control of the Lulu camp with the two of them in power, Shawn at the bottom. And it didn't last long, but that was what was going to happen. We had the tribe switch after that, which had Caleb alone with four other Bellows in Kelly, Jake, Bruce, and Coutura, but through his own charm and charisma and his willingness to open himself up and say, "If you want to use me for your plan, you can use me, just don't vote me out." It actually created several inroads with all four Bellow members to where if they had gone tribal, I think his name may have come up, but it was never going to be a real option to go home, which shows his impressive ability to form quick relationships. Now, the Murgatory is where I think Caleb made his biggest mistake, where he was in a decent position where he could have gone either way, but he played too hard, too fast, and certain players such as like Bruce saw how he was playing and knew that he was putting himself in a better position than him, and at this point he could not catch up, so he had to take Caleb down a peg, and by to down a peg I mean Bruce tried to vote him out, and through his works he was able to put a huge target on Caleb's back, and it nearly sent him home. Now, he was definitely going to go home at that instance. It was a unanimous vote to send him out because people saw his charisma and his threat in the game, and certain players told him to play the shot in the dark, like Emily, and it was all luck based that Caleb got the shot in the dark to work, which saved him. At that point, his target was still on him, and if he had gotten past this one tribal, I think he seems to have gone his way, but they didn't. He got switched into a position where the people who wanted him out the most were on his tribe, and he had relationships with Jake and Coutura that could have saved him. Jake was definitely trying to get the move made to save him, but Coutura jumped ship and switches her vote to vote out Caleb, and that's the end of his game. Now, Caleb played a decently really good game on this season. Not top tier, but impressive. And on a return, it's just a matter of can he quell his own ability to be a natural threat. And I think if he can do that, I think he can play a very well-deserved game in the long run. Okay, now we are here at our top six. These are the people who are given like sort of like a gold star stamp on who played the best games this season. Like there's like little holes you can nick out here, but like these are holes that like only like a flea could jump through. Like these players played the best games by far out of everyone here. And we shall start it off with our last fellow member. I have Kelly. Now, Kelly, in my opinion, is someone who you would consider an all around good survivor player. Very few holes in her game. In the beginning, she put herself in was a very good, solid alliance with Coutura and Kendra, and tried to make sure that she was good with them and that they would never turn against her. And then she focused her sights on Brando, who she perceived to be just as much in the middle as her, and the two of them got to work on Jake and Bruce and made it so that the two of them were cool with them. And so from that point on, she was in the middle and, in my opinion, had more of the control and say than Brando, making her the most valuable and powerful player in that original Bello tribe. And that carried over to the swap, where everyone wanted to work with her. Kelly was the person that, if you're good with Kelly, then you're good with everyone else. So that made Kelly the most powerful player there. I don't know where her head was at during that swap portion, whether her target would have been Coutura or Bruce, but either way, it would have been Kelly saying what she wanted to happen. Now, now that we get to the Mergatory, Kelly's not in any danger here. She doesn't need much going on. She doesn't have to do much here. The target's on Caleb and J Maya. She just goes with the majority. All said and done. Now, we go into the split tribal. She wins individual immunity, so she's safe. But she has the most say and control in that split, as Kendra initially wanted to go for Bruce, and Kelly shut that down and said, "No, we can't get rid of Bruce here. We got the numbers. We gotta get rid of either Drew or Sifu." I learned in Exit Press that Kelly initially wanted to take out Drew, but she could not get the numbers to make the move against him, which is a hole in her game, but an easily forgettable hole. She wanted Sifu out to keep Bruce in the game because he's sort of like her shield, and she got rid of Sifu, who she believed was the biggest wild card in the game. Now, moving into the next episode, which was her vote off episode, she initially was in a really great position, though, and this is the point where she fully turns against Bruce and wants him out. And the only thing that can't happen is him winning immunity, which unfortunately happens. And at that point, I'm not sure how this happened, but things turned against Kelly, where Drew wanted to vote him out, and it wasn't shown on the episode. Like, it wasn't shown on the episode how Drew got the numbers to vote out Kelly. I'm still skeptical on how that happened, but it inevitably did. The Reba 4 plus Emily all voted for Emily, blindsiding her in the most emotional blindside of the season. And I think it all came down to a lack of threat management. Like, not a lot, but just enough to push it over the edge. As for future game possibility, which I think is definitely possible, I think Kelly would do excellent on a return. Like, no doubt. For all those reasons, I have Kelly at number 6. Moving on, at number 5, I have the star player of the season. I have Emily. Now, Emily did not start the game in a very good position. She was very abrasive and confrontational with certain players such as Bruce, Saia, Caleb. And that put her in a very bad position where it was between her and Brandon on who was going to be the first one out. If it had not been for Hannah, the odds of it being her were great. Like, Hannah's quit saved her. After that, she turned her game around, got close with Caleb, who sort of coached her on how to change how her personality is, and that carried her throughout the game, where she made the move against Saia when the tribe swap happened. She was in the middle, and both sides wanted her. Both sides believed her. She ultimately went with the Rebas, but that put her in benefit, where she fully trusted Drew and Austin and wanted to go to the end with them, which I think was the best move for her. Now heading into the Mergatory, she put herself in a very good position where she had all the options she wanted. She could have gone with spells, the Rebas, but no matter what, she was not going to be targeted necessarily for being on the outs. However, Caleb did not have the same luxury, as there was a target on his back, and even though he was her ally, she knew that she could not go down with the ship with him, so she was willing to turn on him. The split tribal did not matter. She was not in any danger there, which was good for her. And when it came to the Kelly vote, the Kendra vote, she went with the majority, the Reba majority, who she trusted. And then came the Bruce vote, where she came up with the plan to null Bruce into a sense of comfort so that he would not play his idol and he would be blindsided with it, which all worked. And it's a tribute to her social game that she renewed because of her growth in the game and her strategic ability on knowing which focal points she needed to press on Bruce in order to get his sense of guard down. After this, she made the biggest mistake she made in the game, where she flat out told everyone, "Hey, I was the one that got Bruce to not play his idol, and this is how I did it," which painted a target on her back and made everyone realize, oh, she's playing a really good game. Wow, I can't let her get to the end because she'll definitely win with what she's been doing. Specifically, Dee and Julie were the ones saying that. And at that point, there was a battle between Emily and Julie on who was going to go home. And Emily had the numbers to stay. Like, she had Jake and Coutura, Drew and Austin. And Julie was going to go home, but because she put herself in that risky of a position that late in the game, she got sniped because of Julie's idle play at 7 with only one vote against her. But other than that, I think Emily played a very great game, and I would love to see her on a return. I think she would do great. And Emily has all the makings of a modern day legend, in my opinion. Okay, now we are heading into the top 4, and unsurprisingly, it is the Reba 4. So, at the bottom of the Reba 4, I have Julie. Now, Julie's game, I think, is a very impressive game up until the final 8, where in the beginning she helped establish the Reba 4 with Drew, Austin, and Dee and solidify their pact. And going to the tribe switch, it seemed like she had all around good relationships with everyone, so she was in the least danger there. And going to the Mergatory, that's when her target started going upward. But she managed to stay out of the crossfire during the initial merge vote. And then the split tribal happened where the target was on her back. Jake and Caleb were trying to target her, but she was able but she had her allies in Dee and Austin with her, so she remained safe and they pulled in Coutura to get out Caleb. And from that point on, the Reba 4 were in control, where they got out Kendra and then Kelly and then Kendra. So she was safe and in no danger there and seemed to have been making relationships that were saving her. Then the target started going on her back because Emily and Bruce were thinking about making a move against her again. And then we come across the final 7, which began to deteriorate her game because it seemed like the Reba 4, at least Drew and Austin, were willing to cut her and were making a point to everyone else that she had to go because apparently she has been making relationships and putting it in everyone's head that if she gets to the end, she will win, which I think is the truth. And it was going to be a unanimous vote, except maybe in that case, Dee wouldn't have voted Julie. But the only reason she survived that vote was because she had an idol, and she only got that idol because of a unusual circumstance where Austin made the mistake of giving her the idol during the Kendra round. So that's a wonky circumstance there where she never should have had the idol to begin with. And then she did get her target out in Emily, but it would have been her going home. Then we get to the final 6th round where again she was being targeted, but she was able to get the numbers on her side to take out Drew. And then going into the final 5 round, it seemed like the target was getting off her back a little bit, but there were still conversations to get her out, which the final 5 round was messy and it's sort of like something you would see in like a Brand Steel simulation or even in Roblox. Like there was no real communication or plan, just everyone voting every which way. And Julie got sniped that round just based off of Austin believing that she's the biggest threat and Couture getting scared at the last minute. Now, supposedly, if she got to the end, she had a massive amount of jury threatability to where she could have won. It also remains to be said, but I think Julie played a good game and she could have won this season if things gone a little bit differently. Okay, now going on to number 3. Here I have Drew. Drew played an impressive game, in my opinion, where he initialized the Reba 4 formation, and like I said before, the plan was Sifu first, then J-Maya, and if the Reba ever went to tribal, but they didn't, and the tribe switch, he was put in a very good position with Austin, and the two of them were managed to form a tight bond with Emily quickly and beat Kendra and Brando to the punch, which is how Drew managed to survive that vote against him. He did make a mistake there where he was semi passive aggressive with Brando to where he was trying to make an alliance with Drew to not target each other, but Drew did not have that. He was close minded to that, and so he turned Brando against him unnecessarily, and that was his biggest flaw in the game, his passive aggressiveness towards other players, to where it turned him off and turned them off to him and made them want to target him more. The merge vote and the mergatory and the split tribal vote, he remained safe, fortunately. And then during the next round, during the Kelly and Kendra votes, those were his idea. The Kelly vote, at least, was. I give the Kendra vote more credit to Dee than Drew, but he was He was on board with that, and the Bruce vote was obvious. Then, during the final 7 round, he was the first one to split up the Reba 4 and targeted Julie, which was a good move in my opinion. It just came down to the next round. It was Drew versus Julie, and that writing was on the wall, and he just did not have the numbers on his side that he decided to take Julie out. And that goes to his lack of social awareness during the later rounds. Even though Drew was being talked as a threat, and I think he was strategically, I don't think that if he got to the end, he had a winning scenario based on his plans, which were to go to the end with Austin and D. I think Drew had to go to the end with Coutura and Jake in order to have a chance at winning, which he was not planning to do. But he overall had a good game, and I think if he were to return with more life experience under him, he has a decent chance to win, and for all that, that's why I have him at number 3. Now we are at the top 2 players of the season, and unironically, it's the final 2 of this season, and at number 2, I have the runner-up in Austin. Austin, in my opinion, played the best runner-up game of the new era, getting the 3 votes in Final Tribal, more than anyone else has in the new era thus far. Now, as far as his whole game goes, it was very advantage-based, with him getting idols and amulets and all that. So his strategy was revolved around that. Now, the social game was very impressive as he was initially part of the Reba 4, and that carried over to the Switch where he was tied to Drew. And whenever Drew made a mistake with like Emily or Brando, he was always the one to course correct and fix it for him. And with that, they got the trust of Emily and were able to vote out Brando in that instance. Now heading into the Mergatory, Austin was remained safe, and during that round and the split tribal round, it seemed like he wanted to both target and keep. He wanted to target Caleb first because he seemed to be the biggest threat, and then during the split tribal round, he wanted to keep Caleb because he wanted to preserve the bigger threats. Neither chance he was able to get his way, but that was because Dee, who was his parent's number 1 ally next to Drew, that was her will. And next few rounds, during the Kelly vote, the Kendra vote, the Bruce vote, he went with the majority and went with his alliance. Now, during the Kendra vote, when all the tribes split up, he gave his idol to Julie in case the worst case scenario happened, which was a mistake. Which he had to course correct by essentially flushing his own idol out during the Julie vote, which he planned on blindsiding Julie and getting his idol out that way, but that did not happen. That did not happen because Austin went and told Dee the plan because he believed that Dee would not tell Julie, but that was a mistake as Dee did tell Julie. And so Julie played the idol and sent Emily home, who was Austin's ally. And then going to the Drew vote, he had an advantage amulet that was a full-blown idol that had to be played that round. And the plan was basically the same as before, blindside Julie, who this time had no protection. But he did not know that Dee was actually plotting against Drew, and she did not make the same mistake Austin did and she did not tell him that Drew was going home in fear that Austin, who would play his essentially an idol for Drew. And so during the vote, Austin had no idea what was going on, and Drew went home that instance, which shows how non shows that he did not know what was going on that round. And then in the final five vote, okay, he immediately forgives Dee, and there is essentially no consequences to her actions. And even if I was Austin in that sense, and I was blindsided by Dee, I would forgive, but I would not forget. But Austin forgave and forgot. And when toe and toe with Dee till the very end, he blindsided Julie in the final five round, and then he could not convince Dee to throw him in fire, and through all that, he made it to the final three, and he put on a very solid performance in Final Tribal Council, getting 3 votes in the end, and putting up a real good performance going toe-to-toe against Dee, but ultimately it was not enough to get the win. With all that combined and the potential of a return, that's all that shows Austin's abilities in the game, and that's all why I have him at number 2. And now we are here at number 1, and I have our winner, our sole survivor, Dee. Dee played the best game by far. She's currently in the talks of being one of the best tier winners of all time, being compared to like Kim Spradlin and Earl Cole, which are very impressive. Now, as far as Dee's game goes this season, we see off the top her bonding closely with Julie, and through that relationship, she put together the Reba 4 lines of her, Julie, Drew, and Austin. And it was sort of like it was Drew, the Reba 4 were ultimately Drew and Austin's relationship, Dee and Julie's relationship, and Austin and Dee's relationship. And I guess there's somewhere along there is a Drew and Julie relationship. Ultimately, it was a formation of relationships between all of our players that made the strongest alliance of the season. And so she was in the center, protected during the initial Reba formation, and during the switch, she and Julie were in all the decision-making position of the Switch tribe, where they could either vote out Sifu or Shawn, or even Jay if they wanted. They ultimately Dee wanted to go for Sifu, but Shawn's quit threw a wrench in that. But she decided to continue on with the Sifu plan, even though things switched up. And doing that should have put her in a bad position, but through her social relations and the fact that Jay sort of took the fire for her, Dee was once again in a untouchable position where now she could continue going after Sifu, or if she wanted to switch things up, go for Jay. And now we go into the Mergatory, where her name is brought up, but not for a target, but because Caleb called her out and said if she wants to remain safe, side with him and go for Jay, which put Dee's name out, which made Dee's target clear to go for Caleb. And that translated over into the switch vote. And her target was clearly Caleb, and she made sure that happened, which goes to show her both strategic and social game. And to that translated over after the Kelly vote was Kendra vote, where it was up in the air between Jake and Kendra, and she wanted Kendra, and she got Kendra. And For the Bruce vote, I mean, she played a role in that. Bruce was blindsided. Good. Now, the final 7 on, I believe the final 7 and final 6 rounds are where her game was at her strongest because through her relationships with Austin and Julie, her two number ones, which is not mathematically correct, she was able to get information from Austin about Julie, and she used that information to help Julie and get out her number one target in Emily and get no blood on her hands until she needed to say that information at Final Tribal, which was impressive. And she got her social and strategic game in the final 6th round got all the suspicion off of her that she was the one that told Julie about the plan to blindside her. So Drew and Austin believe that Julie just figured it out on her own. And Dee wanted Drew out, and she managed to get Julie, Jay, Coutura all on board. She did not make the same mistake as Austin and did not tell him a thing. So Drew was blindsided. The final 5 round is probably her weakest point in the game, where essentially communication was cut thin thread, and everyone was going every which way. Dee wanted Coutura, Jake wanted to Julie, then wanted Dee, Coutura wanted Dee, and then switched to Julie. Austin wanted to go for Julie. Julie. It was a whole bunch of mess where Dee was at her most vulnerable and would have been voted out if Coutura hadn't gotten scared at the last minute, which is a knock to her game because she did not do anything to get the target off her back, but she managed to survive that vote and make it to the final 4 round, where she won final immunity and got to choose who to send into fire. She was not going to throw Austin in there because she wanted to go to the end with him, and throwing him in fire would have given him something to say at Final Tribal, so he threw in Coutura, who she wanted out, and Jake, who she believed was a non-threat, which she was right about, and Coutura was sent home. Now, her Final Tribal performance still leaves a lot to be wanted, but she made her points. She said what her game was all about, that she used her brain and her heart, and that they were tied together, and she couldn't have done it without either one. And she revealed how she managed to get Emily out by using her relationships with Austin and Julie to fool everyone into thinking that she was not the one that told Julie, but that she did, and that was her big move of the season, which won the respect of the jury and got her 5 votes in the end to win the title of Sole Survivor. It's an impressive game. I give her props. She's one of the most dominant winners we've seen so far in years, especially in the new era. And I think on return, she would do a similar job. Like, as far as winners I would compare to her, I would say she's like a Parvati, and I'd love to see her return, and I think she's a great player and the best player from this season. That is it. That wraps up my coverage on Survivor 45. Now, Survivor 46 is coming in February. I'm currently blanking on the exact day. I'm thinking 22nd, but I definitely could be wrong about that. Anyway, when that comes around, I've decided to sort of pivot my style of coverage just a bit. I'm not sure how yet, but I'm definitely taking a change on it, sort of being locked in at a single site that I judge players on. It did not work this season, and I need to pivot and change how I do things, so I'm going to be doing that. But anyway, 46 looks good. It looks like that they're trying something new out, or new-ish. But anyway, that's it for me. Till next time, I am Voidtune, and may love prosper and Let's keep things going and going and going in the upwards direction. Peace.